Welcome back to the Okayest Cook Podcast. Back in the office today, doing a little remote session with Mr. Andy Heiser. How you doing today, sir?
Doing well, buddy. How are you?
You know, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah.
It's been a day. So it is officially hunting season here in
today's
Indiana. Opening day today. So take a quick peek at the ticker here. We've got custom discount code for Outdoor Edge knives. So if you need help breaking down any wild game or non-wild game, if you listened to our pig chat the other day, you know, my knives came in super handy breaking down that farm pig. So, what is our code? OKC20 will give you 20% off Outdoor Edge knives. If you need a couple extra blades in your kit, you definitely do. So check that out, buy some knives and rip through your stuff. Real good and fun. Got a special treat for us today. We have the Harvesting Nature guys. Let me bring them in. No need to dilly-dally here. Yes, sir. We have Justin and Adam from Harvesting Nature. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
You know, we can't complain. No one's listening.
Yeah. I complain all the time. It doesn't get me anywhere. But here we go.
Yes. So really excited about what you guys are going to bring to the conversation tonight. Before we get into that, though, anybody have some really cool like meals of the weeks you want to chat about? What's going on here? What have you guys been eating?
You want to go first, Justin?
Yeah, sure. So I just bought like a brand new open fire cooking like fire pit, and it got here on Saturday, but it has literally been raining for 8 days. So last night it finally paused long enough to for me to break it out, and so I went down to the store and got some wood and stuff, and I did rainbow trout over the fire on like a flat cast iron griddle, and then did a bunch of roasted veggies. I did like zucchini and eggplant, and then I took a bunch of types of melons, like pumpkin, curry melon, acorn squash, and sweet potato, and just put them in the coals of the fire and let them cook. And then kind of like scraped everything out and cubed it up, and gonna make some soup and stuff probably with it. But the trout was phenomenal. I did like a toragashi seasoning on top of it, and
I don't know what that means.
So good. It's good.
it's Okayest Cook.
Remember what podcast you're on here.
Available in your local Japanese store if you're looking.
There we go.
Yeah.
You might have to email me that recipe later on. But
yeah.
Dude, you're over there doing that, and I'm over here just trying to master coleslaw. For that barbecue I did a couple of weeks ago, I bought this big bag of pre-made just cut cabbage ready to go, and I'm just trying to master coleslaw. And there's a barbecue joint here in town who does a bomber horseradish coleslaw, so I'm just trying to mix that in, kind of do my own version of that. I actually ran out of mayo, so I had to learn how to make my own mayo this afternoon. And it came together all right. Didn't really use the right kind of mustard, and the vinegar might be off, but it came together. It's all right.
Yeah, it's tasty, I bet.
It didn't break on me, so I'm happy about that. Threw together coleslaw and probably put a little too much habanero in it and a little too much horseradish, so it'll knock your socks off. But
Chris loves everything way too hot. Everything he makes is very, very hot.
Oh, yeah.
I've kind of fried my taste buds, so I gotta add a little more. So that was my meal of the week.
I was just cooking up something for a recipe I'm developing. It's a rough grouse, just oven roasted. I basically just like rubbed it with butter, got some under. So I always pluck my grouse, so it's not just a breast. So I do the whole grouse. I spatchcocked it, which means just cutting the spine and popping it open so it flattens. And then roasted in the oven with some butter and a little bit herb de Provence, which is just a mix of, I think, was it thyme, basil, lavender, something like that, marjoram.
I've got it in the cupboard, but I don't know what's in it.
Yeah. And then I made like a whiskey cream sauce. So I just sauteed some shallots in butter, deglazed the pan with whiskey, and then added some Dijon mustard and cream and some Worcestershire sauce. And it smells delicious. I haven't even tasted it yet because I hopped on this just when it finished. So yeah, it looks good. It smells good.
That sounds
nice.
awesome.
Yeah,
awesome. Mine's actually, normally I try not to do things from restaurants when we do this, but I've had a couple experiences the last week or so that are pretty good. And the one from the other night was actually, I was at a rather popular Mexican restaurant in this area that we're in, and they had ribeye tacos. But what was cool about it was not only was it just basically like carne asada style tacos, right? 3 of them, but next to it was half a piece of bone cut open with the bone marrow.
Oh,
My God, so good. And it's one of those things where it's like, man, it's I've had one experience. We talked about that. If you go back and listen to the last episode, I talked about what I ate. In that episode, I had a piece of elk that I had put into a roast, and it had some marrow in it. It was really good. So when I saw this on the menu, I was like, I have to do it.
Yes.
And it was so good. So getting some good bone marrow in me. But again, from a restaurant, and it was beef. So breaking all the rules. There we go.
Dude, now as long as you try and do that later on.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all research. It's R&D. It counts.
Right.
Well, you guys did the Harvesting Nature bone episode not too long ago, right?
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
We were supposed to talk about all sorts of things, and we kind of drooled about bone marrow for 3/4 of the episode.
It's so good. It's like just cracking into like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how to describe
so
it for
good.
someone who hasn't had it, but it's just rich and fatty and just.
It just feels like you shouldn't eat it, but it's so good.
Yeah, I describe it as like meat butter. Like if butter was just like from meat,
precisely.
Yeah,
it's so good. Well, yeah, I think you guys segued into the meat and bones of today's episode real well, just with like all these weird processes. So like I think you guys are gonna like share a little bit about like some hot tips on maybe how to cook better or how would you not mastering, but just upping your technique in the kitchen, or do you guys just want to take it away for? I mean, we'll let the experts kind of run the show here from here on out, and Andy and I will just sit back and listen.
I'll be here taking notes. Continue.
I think I would like categorize it probably as just adding more tools to your toolbox. And these are like those really like flashy techniques. I think some of them I won't say basic, but some of them like good leveling techniques to kind of either fix or repair dishes. And then other ones are like, you do this stuff when you're having a party and you want to impress people. It like break those techniques out. But I think learning to kind of do them and just having them under your belt and being comfortable with it is kind of like the biggest thing. And I will say this too. I'm one of those people, like I kind of research techniques a little bit, and then a lot of it is just kind of doing it. And I think, it's funny. We were talking earlier about like culinary school and stuff like that for me. And I was like, I'm more like street raised in the kitchen. And so just doing things, like, hey, go figure out how to go do this thing. And I'm like, all right, like, I may flip through some books or search around on the internet or do whatever. And then at the end of the day, it's just like, we're going head first. Whether it tastes good or not, we'll figure it out later or we'll fix it, but we'll start there and then we may do it again later. So,
yeah. Well, dude, I love the fact that you're not trained, like classically trained. Like you would not assume that listening to the podcast, like the way you guys talk about all these dishes. I'm like, these guys had to have all gone to school and like done the whole, like got a culinary master's degree on the shelf behind them. But no, you're 100% self-taught, just doing it because you want to do it, which is super cool.
Yeah, I think
inspiring and kind of terrifying at the same time.
I worked at my first restaurant in like 2009. I think December 31st, 2009. So New Year's Eve was my first shift in a restaurant, and then like off and on since then, but all over the country, and it's been great. And then I think Adam, I am more impressed by Adam every day that I talk to him, because I know a lot of his passion comes from just straight passion. A lot of mine came from passion, but also the need for a job. But Adam just loves it.
Yeah, it's totally feral, just running around in the woods, learning this stuff. My culinary restaurant experience consists of Burger King for 3 years when I was a teenager. So that's about it.
It's better than nothing, right?
Yeah, but it's just passionate, and it shows that if you have a passion and you want to learn, it's not that difficult to learn.
Yeah.
I'm sure I have some inherent skill already, but a lot of it's just trying and doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it, and having the passion to push through your mistakes, and then you can get anywhere you want to be.
Yeah, just getting outside of that fear of failure, or like Justin said, like learning how to repair a dish that you kind of messed up a little bit, and just not letting that hinder your experience moving forward. So
definitely the risk is quite low. Like, we're not working on someone's brain and being like, I don't know what to do here, I'll just try this out. Like
this scenario, you throw some money down the drain on
the very first
burgers
thing
you messed up, or
and often
get set on fire. I don't know.
The things that I've really messed up, people have told me are still pretty edible.
That is one big takeaway I learned from that barbecue I did, and I feel like I'm a lot more of a picky eater than 9 out of 10 of my friends, and so like what I'm kind of poo-poo, and you only know the mistakes that you know of. And like if you're eating a dish and like you don't see all the flaws that the cook knows are there, like you're probably not going to notice them. So you are your own worst critic. Like many other parts of life.
I call it like the artist eye, right? So an artist paints a giant big portrait, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing ever, and the artist goes through and is like, well, I smudged that, or that line's not straight, or this and that. I think that's like so applicable to cooking too. Like I can tell you, I'm in the same vein as Adam and probably you, Chris. It's just like some of my food I think is okay, and then other people will rave about it, and then some of it I'm like, oh, this is really good, and people are like, this is the most amazing thing ever, and I'm like, yeah, like it's good. It's okay.
Yes. So it's good to surround yourself with people with no taste buds, is what I mean.
Yeah, with low standards. I try to keep my friends with low standards. It makes it easier for me.
Lots of alcohol helps too.
That always helps.
Well, I think there's something to be said. We talk about this on the show a lot about, we talked about that in the last episode too. The fact that, anytime you make something, especially when it's a homemade dish, whether it's wild game or not wild game, I think people have a level of respect for it too. When grandma takes the turkey out of the oven for Thanksgiving and it's still a little dry, like your grandma still made it for you. So it's still a great meal. So I think a lot about those aspects go into it too. So, and also too, let's be honest, if you're standing, there's probably, yes, you can burn stuff and you can fully ruin things, but for the most part, most things are probably pretty salvageable. As Adam was saying, like you can test some stuff and it doesn't work out. It probably isn't maybe your favorite flavor profile, but it's still good.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, on that note, let's dive into some of these techniques. And do you mind starting with the salvaging a meal technique? Like what are some of the things you do to kind of rescue a dish that's gone a little haywire?
I think I'll kick this one over to Adam, and we could talk about like balancing flavor with like salt, acid, sugar. That's probably like the easiest way to salvage like a dish, I think.
Yeah. So there's when you have a problem with a dish, it's likely going to be that it's not flavorful enough, or there's too much of something. Like it's too salty, too spicy, or it's bland and insipid in some sort of way. If it's too much of something, that's actually sometimes it can be harder to fix, but it's always fixable. If you make a soup or something and it's too salty, and you're like, I don't know, I can't even eat this, it's too salty. You can add more liquid to it, or you can add things that sop up some of that salt. Potatoes do a good job of that. So if you add potatoes and boil your soup for longer, they'll help kind of soak some of that salt flavor up. You can reduce the level of saltiness. Same with spiciness. You can tame some spiciness with sweet. So you can add some sort of sugar, honey, or maple syrup, and that often will balance it out a little bit. Or sometimes you just add more of everything other than salt or chilies.
That's what I typically do is like, too much salt. Let's double the recipe.
Double it up, yeah. So if we're dealing with something like that, another issue sometimes is burning something.
Been there.
Oftentimes you can just cut the burnt parts off
That's what I did to my pig.
Yeah, it's usually not the end of the world. If you burn something like bread, it might be too much, or you burn a bunch of pasta at the bottom of the pot. You might be better off just starting over.
Making more.
Yeah, but I find if I have, say, a stew or something I find when I go to stir it, it's burnt to the bottom of the pot. Just decant it into a new pot and don't touch the bottom at all.
That is a huge tip. Yeah, if you burn your soup, just don't stir it
Don't
too
stir
hard.
it all up. Yeah.
Don't scrape off all that acrid bits on the bottom. Yeah.
The minute you feel the resistance on the bottom of the pot, you're like, okay, I went too far with this. Decant it into another pot and don't disturb it, and you'll likely be okay. The minute you stir all those burnt bits up, it's kind of too late.
Love that tip. Yes.
So going on the other side, when your food is not flavorful enough, it's a little insipid or something like that, a little too bland, people automatically will reach for the salt, and salt will often help because salt helps magnify flavors. It doesn't just add saltiness; it actually makes flavors more flavorful. So it kind of enlivens things.
Okay.
But if you add too much, it can deaden things too. It just takes over. So I recommend tasting something, maybe adding a little bit of salt, seeing if that makes a difference. But often what people are missing in their stuff is acid.
Okay.
And a tablespoon of vinegar or lemon juice will often pop all of flavors way better than salt ever can. So if you're finding your food is tasting, your casserole, your soup, or your stew, or your sauce, or whatever you're making is tasting a little flat, try adding some lemon juice or a little bit of vinegar or something like that. And just start small, maybe a teaspoon, another teaspoon, give it a try and see how what transformation happens. Cause it's actually insane what a little bit of acid can, like how much it can transform a dish.
Yeah. I've got that cookbook, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. Yeah. I need to finish reading it. I'm only a few pages in.
Yeah. She had that was a Samran Nasrat, is that her name?
I forget her name.
Yeah, but she had it on. It's exactly what you need in the kitchen. You got to be balancing these things, and when you're tasting it, think in those lines. Like, does it need more salt? Does it need more fat? Does it need more body? Fat gives body. Salt amplifies flavors. Acid will help brighten everything. And sometimes you need a little bit of sweetness to help round things out. So think of flavors almost as shapes. Things are too edgy. You might want to round it out with a touch of maple syrup or something, or a little bit of sugar and a tomato sauce.
100%,
and those, like, looking at food in that way and adding small amounts of these things can help transform your food, and then you can keep tasting it the whole time. Add a little bit, taste it. Add a little bit, taste it. You'll start to get a sense of easily how you can transform your meals like that. Now, when I taste something that doesn't taste right, I know exactly what needs, because I've tasted so many things with that in mind. Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah,
super cool. What's next? I mean, I see on the list we've got non-stick pans. That's kind of where my mind went when we were talking about the burned soup. And you have a cast iron listed here. Can you just real quick? I mean, cast iron versus stainless steel. I mean, it sounds like you have a preference just because you wrote cast iron. But definitely not a non-stick pan. Is that your recommendation?
Yeah.
Or like you pretty much whatever.
So I think like stainless or cast iron are, like, in my opinion, the way to go. I think we've relied a lot, just like we being general population kind of home cooks or whoever, relied on non-stick for a long time. And, it came out right. It was the revolutionary thing. It was like this thing that changed the way people cooked in their house. Teflon, right?
Yeah.
And then of course there's the big concerns, or a lot of big concerns with Teflon coming off, and
cancer.
Also too, like, the way it's produced, it's not great. So I think to me, like, as stewards of the outdoors, as a lot of us are, hunters, anglers, foragers, like, that's kind of one of those things. Like, it's not a great thing that when it's made, but it's also not great to consume. So we have these two, like, very tried and true. I would say three. I would throw three out there. We have these three types of pots and pans that are tried and true, that have been used for a long time. Cast iron has been around forever. I would say copper pots have been around forever, and then stainless steel have been around forever. And I think you can cook on those types of pots just as easy as you can on nonstick. You just have to learn. And it's not as simply like click on the fire and just like, voila, you're ready to throw something in there. Yeah. Like it doesn't take as much finesse as you would think. It's all about temperature control. And I think once you get to that point and like understanding how the pan itself is going to react, like it's a pretty good tool. And then also too, you can just beat the hell out of them. Like,
and I love that we're talking about this, because this is actually, I just moved into this new house, and I was like, I don't want to use any of the old stuff at all. I just redid all of my entire kitchen, like all of the pots and pans, everything is new, and everything is stainless steel, or I have my cast iron. I got a Dutch oven, and I also have just my standard cast iron that we've talked about on this podcast before. And watch some YouTube videos, guys. It's really not, you're spot on. Like, it's just temperature control. Yes, you can do everything that you're doing in your nonstick pan. You just have to understand like when it's ready to be used, and then control your temperature. I also will say that I have gas at this house, and that has been a game changer as well, being able to control temperature a lot better.
Yeah.
But hands down, it's one of those things that once you figure out how to use it, there's no reason, anybody can do this. It's not hard. It's just a matter of understanding that you can't just like throw it on there and just start throwing your eggs in there. Like, you got to get it up to temperature. Eggs like to be around 200. Like, once you learn a little bit of these things, I feel like the control you get with the meals that I make with it is so much better. My ground beef is so much better in either a cast iron or I say ground beef, and that's always venison, but my ground venison is always better out of those two. Then I feel like no more steaming meat, which just happens in that cast iron, that nonstick stuff. So love that we're talking about that. And again, I guess if you're going to get into cast iron or stainless steel, like if you had to pick one for someone who's just getting into that, which would you recommend they start with?
Probably cast iron. Yeah, I think like stainless steel is good. You have to cook it like a higher temperature on there, and there are some like nuances that you want to do. And I think just in general, I find cast iron is here. I'll lead this with a statement, that I'll follow it up with a thought. Cast iron is easier to keep clean than stainless is. Stainless will kind of blemish and stuff like that. But the caveat being that no matter how well you like clean and scrub it, you're putting it back on the stove and you're heating it up to like 300, 400 degrees before you put any food in it. So there's going to be no bacteria on it. So like this whole notion of cleanliness is like, is very, subjective to just our own like personality of what clean looks like. I would say too that I think cast iron is thicker. I mean, you get good thick stainless steel pans, but I think with any pan, you want like a thick bottom pan. And cast iron just naturally comes kind of relatively thick. I think that's the problem people have too with cooking on even nonstick. So also too, people have with nonstick is the fact that it's so thin. And so you turn the heat on it, and you may have a cheap, thin nonstick pan, and it's just like gets these hot spots all over it. So
yeah, no, and it is, and I had a couple, and I'm not going to name names on brands and whatnot that I was using beforehand, but that was always that. No matter which, I spent some good money on some nonstick options out there, some names that you've seen in your Instagram feed, I'm sure, but nothing seems to, like, they always end up developing a little bit of a hot spot. All the other reasons why you can do your own research on why you shouldn't be using a nonstick pan. But I love a good cast iron. And again, like, it's kind of my go-to on anything. It's just, I feel like it's easier to control too. I feel like from a temperature standpoint, my stainless can get a little crazy on hot, like how quickly it raises and lowers in temperature. But like once you get your cast iron up and get it there, takes a little longer to cool it down than some of the nonstick stuff. But once you get that temperature set, especially if you're cooking like I do a lot of meal prep, and so a lot of this if you guys have ever listened to our episode, I talk about meal prep a lot. But so I'll run pounds of ground venison through on a Sunday, and I mean by the last pound of like the bits that are going on inside of that cast iron, the flavor profile that's just developed in that thing, it's so good. And I just feel like the food is just a heck of a lot better out of these different vessels, if you will, along the way. So you haven't experimented, go buy yourself a pan, try it. Worst case scenario, you burn something, you have to clean a pan.
Yeah, I need to work with mine a lot more, and definitely need to ditch the Teflon. Definitely need to ditch our non-stick pans. And was kind of curious if I needed a stainless steel set or just stick with the one size cast iron.
I will say though, if that's what you got and that's what you're using, again, I still think it's important for you to start learning like your temperatures, start paying a little more attention to what the temperatures are.
Paying attention, that's the thing.
Yeah. Paying attention.
Yes.
But because I think I think you can do everything we're talking about doing in a Teflon pan. It's just a matter of, or nonstick pan, but it is I do feel like the end result is just a heck of a lot better in those two, personally.
And you can just pop it in the oven, which is such a great benefit of it. Like a Teflon pan, you're not going to put it in the oven. You shouldn't be.
No, shouldn't be.
I find that really good cooks, the better you get at cooking, you tend to cook high and low, and you don't cook in the middle too much. And I find that cooks who are a little hesitant about things and maybe a little trepidatious about cooking things, they tend to cook on medium. And I don't find I cook on medium too often anymore. And Teflon pans are great for cooking on medium. Like they're safe that way, they work. But the minute you take it too high, you wreck the Teflon on it. So
right. Well, it's a great point too, because like if you're cooking something, and you're like, oh man, the outside's done, but the inside's not. You pop the whole thing in the oven and finish it there, and it'll be delicious. Yeah, it's awesome.
I find myself like pushing the smoke point on oils and like all that. I'm like, oh yeah, all the way up. Oh, it's smoking. All right, I'll put everything in. Like, I think, and to me,
that's how you know it's ready when it starts burning. Right?
And maybe that comes from like the restaurant world of just like you have like these burners that are like either off or high. Like, and you're like you're managing so much at once, trying to get food out that you're just kind of like always trying to cook fast, but like maintain that consistency.
Nice. Yeah, nice. Get your, if you're gonna do the cast iron route, maybe make sure you have a good exhaust fan. That's the one down.
That's true. Well, we were at what was it, Rendezvous last year?
Yeah,
BHA Rendezvous, and we I don't know, we were cooking on an electric skillet or whatever at our booth, but we smoked out the entire like presentation hall.
I thought we were gonna on the sprinklers where everyone's displays.
Oh no!
Did you get invited back?
Oh yeah,
the following year.
They know we like to party. It's okay.
Yes. Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, on that topic here, let's talk about blowtorching stuff. You've got that listed as well. If you guys are done with cast iron, I want to hear more about the blower. Give me the blowtorch.
I think like the blowtorch is, so there's like several different kinds. You think of like, what immediately comes to my mind when you think about blowtorches, like creme brulee. That's always kind of like the easiest thing. But blowtorches can be used for so much more. And you don't have to go out and go buy like a fancy one off Amazon. It's like made for pastry cooks and all that.
There's a tool I saw. It's like a disc at the end of your blowtorch. It kind of, I don't know what it spreads it out maybe, or
diffuser.
Well, it eliminates to that like propane-y taste. Or gas taste, whatever.
I thought maybe it was like just a bigger like a heating surface.
I think it does it more evenly, and then kind of like you said, it disperses that fuel, so you don't get that like heavy foot. Okay, but I've got like the same torch you like braise copper pipe with. Like I went to the hardware store and I was like, I used it on everything. I'm like, oh, that doesn't look crispy enough. I'm like,
so Chris, on a sous vide note, I did a sous vide roast, and it ran for like almost like more than I was pushing almost 2 days, like 40 hours. This thing was in there, but the intent was to do a blowtorch at the end, which is exactly what I did. And I just took it out to the garage, and I had my from Lowe's. I mean, it's like I grabbed a camping propane tank, so I'm like, that's got to be food safe. It's fine. And it finished it off so well. It got the crispies on all of it. Flavors. I didn't have it. I had none at all. It was so good. So
it's like a
that's the only
gas
time
barbecue.
Yeah, just like a gas barbecue.
Yeah, gas barbecue. You generally don't get too many bad flavors off that, so it's pretty similar.
And I think too, like but beyond meat, to like veggies And even to, if you're going to like top something, you see like breadcrumb topped dishes, like gratin or things like that. Like you can, in the restaurants, they'll throw those into like what's called a salamander, which is like this thing that's got the flame on the top and it kind of like, it's a broiler basically. They'll throw them in there and let it cook from the top down. But you can do that with a torch on like anything. You can like put gratin on the steak. Like all you do is you take breadcrumbs and mix it with some oil or something, some seasonings, put it on top of it, and then you can hit it and it just crisp it up.
Nice.
Without cooking what's below it. So that's a cool thing. But also too, like searing vegetables, if you've got like, I don't know, say you grill vegetables, but you don't, you've got like, I've got like a pellet smoker and it doesn't always get a good char on it, but I like char because I think it to a point, it imparts good flavors. And I think you can hit that with the,
well, there's a chef. He did one of the Chef's Table episodes, and he's like embracing just the flavor of char. Do you guys know who that is?
Yeah, it's
that technique.
Jose.
And he was legit he had a Blackstone kind of cooking surface, and he just like would put tomatoes on it until they just were just black. And he's like, that's
Francis Mallman
when they're black.
Oh yeah, Mallman.
Well, I need to look him up more about like are you guys taking it that far with your blowtorch at times, or like? Yeah,
sometimes. I bought his book about 3 weeks ago. He's got one. It's called Green Fire. It's all about like cooking vegetables, which is unusual to hear out of the mouth of a wild game chef. But gonna balance
vegetables. With the sides, we've talked about sides a lot. We gotta have them.
But I think you can go that far with that. But I think if you're going to do like full on char, really get deep into that, you want to go like over the fire cooking because you get different flavors if you're looking for that.
Yeah. Like really there's one cool thing just to ruin your segue. There's one good, so one good technique with a torch I saw from Kenji Alt Lopez. He's a Serious Eats in New York Times food. He's put a couple books. He's awesome if you want to learn cool, good techniques that are like very science based. He's great. But so there's something called wok hai in Chinese food when you're using a wok, and it's basically what's happening is they're cooking over a flame, and the oils that are getting tossed up as you're tossing a wok are catching on fire and kind of bursting and creating this flavor that you only get from a Chinese restaurant. You can't replicate that at home with like a jet burner on your stove, But he took a torch and tossed the vegetables with the stir fry, with the torch going over it. And that recreated that wok hai flavor that you can't find anywhere else. So you can only get it from a Chinese restaurant. And those who have had a stir fry at a Chinese restaurant probably you can tell us that kind of charred, awesome flavor you just don't taste anywhere else.
It's that low main flavor.
Like low main.
Yeah.
But the torch can do that.
I've had some conversations with other cooks who go out to eat kind of disappointed. Like we know enough about cooking that like we know something's like weird about this restaurant, or like we can't quite figure out what they did. So I've never thought about that technique and that being a part of
it's
what
definitely
makes the Chinese food as special as it is.
Yeah, that definitely adds this taste that you can't replicate at home easily unless you have a torch. So
the technique, it's all in the technique.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well, you thought you broke my segue, but you didn't, because I'll just make a different topic and we'll go into Flambeau. So you've got two techniques that involve fire. We'll just stay on fire because fire is cool. Also, if you want to do this at a party, do it safely. But these are impressive. Like, you'll scare somebody, but it's okay. Flambeau is a great technique. So when people think about it a lot, probably the most is like with alcohol in the pan and you light it on fire, like the alcohol cooks down, you're still left with the flavor. That's probably the most common way, but you can set lots of things on fire, like desserts you can set on fire. And it just adds to like, I think baked Alaskan, I think is one you do with the same technique, the Flambeau. But that one's cool. A good way to do a lot of sauces and stuff is to do that and then follow it on, kind of pour the alcohol in there, set it on fire, and then let it burn down, and you get some cool flavors. A new technique I've been wanting to try, and I haven't tried. Well, we kind of tried it. We did it with like the bear fat oysters.
Saw that. Looked awesome.
We've gotten a lot of mixed feedback on the socials from that.
Really? People don't like it?
I think no, people are like all over the place. It's funny because what people pick up on to like critique you on like some mass thing. So I don't know what consists when a thing goes viral, but this thing's had like over 350,000 views.
Nice.
Like this reel, which is great. But people are like, it ranges from people want to call me out and said I look like Kenny Powers, and then some is like, who puts bear fat on oysters? And then there's a whole debate going on amongst like 6 people about the parasites in bear fat, and which
it's not in the fat, is it?
No, well, you have to render bear fat.
If you render it, then you're fine. Yeah,
it feels anything.
It's all dead. Come on, that's protein. Come on.
We started kind of with that idea of how to get there from. It's a technique called Flambeau or Flambeau. I don't know, Adam, if I'm right.
The sound of this,
I'm not sure actually.
Yeah, so it is a device that's actually named after the technique. It's called a Flambeau. You've probably seen it before. It's like almost a funnel shape, but it's kind of like a 4-walled small funnel. I'd say it's probably a couple inches wide and probably like 6 inches tall or so. It's on the end of a stick, and they take that and they put it in the fire until it's really hot, and then they take butter or another fat and put in it, and it just like instantly melts and kind of like partially ignites and sizzles on whatever it goes on.
I have seen that on Instagram. Yeah.
Yes. So that was the basis of the bear fat oysters that we did, because we had bear fat and we had a bunch of oysters, and we're like, all right, we're gonna do this. So I took the pan. I didn't have the device. I looked them up. They're like $90 to $200 on the internet.
Whoa.
Yeah, which is insane because I guess it's so niche that like blacksmiths make it, which I think is super cool. It makes me want one even more. But I took my like copper pan, I put it on my smoker, which was running at 500 degrees, which is why the intro to the video says 500-degree bear fat, because at one point it was 500 degrees. Obviously, there were some steps in there.
Not when you're slamming them.
Yeah. Slamming 500-degree oysters.
These guys are tough. Yeah.
But yeah, that was the basis for us to kind of do it. But I think it's a cool technique, like even using hot oils to cook things.
Yeah.
So you could. I'm thinking
the chili oil craze, right? Where like they put up the crazy hot oil on top of all these ingredients. So like in that vein, right?
I think with wild game, it would be really cool because you've got to cut a meat that you relatively know like it's safe. Like you're not getting a lot of bacteria inside of it, and you're really concerned with the outside of it. So you could, in theory, do the same technique, and we have access to unique fats and stuff, duck fat, bear fat, all these other stuff, to heat them up to a really high temperature and then kind of like pour them over things to just lightly cook the outside. And then to bring it full circle, you follow it up with like a torch and steer it.
I mean, instantly. I mean, you mentioned duck. I'm just thinking like real thin pieces of duck breast. Like, do that technique with the duck fat from that duck.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And there's a Chinese technique that's very similar, which like plays into that chili oil comment. But when you're catching wild fish, something that like people just fry their fish. They put fish crisp or whatever the American equivalent of that is, like the bagged kind of coating, and fry it, and that's delicious. I'm not going to deny that that's a delicious thing to do. There's so much more you can do with your fish. And this awesome technique from the Chinese that uses a similar kind of technique, you steam your fish whole, and then you put some like, garlic, chilies, ginger, cilantro, whatever on top, and then you just pour smoking hot fat over it, and it crisps the skin up a little bit. It aromatizes all those things you put on. It's all this really awesome, delicate kind of flavors that like works so great with a delicate whitefish. So I've done that with bass, with walleye, with all these different things, and it's beautiful. It's just like it's really fun to do because you're sizzling it over. It's like it goes nuts. It's a really cool technique, and it's something you can do with you could do a duck fat walleye dish, and it would taste amazing. So you can take some of these techniques and like spread them around. You can apply them to different things, and it's really tasty.
Yeah, and it also hits on texture, which I feel like, at least for me, like a lot of times that's what my dishes are lacking, or that's kind of what I'm craving, is just like some texture differentiations. Like maybe I need something crunchy, like in a dish that's too soft, or vice versa. That's been a game changer for me, at least in my kitchen, just to start thinking about that more, and just, how do you elevate dishes to the next level? And I feel like texture is a great way to do that. Definitely.
I think that's a good thing to think about. Like when you're looking at a dish, or you're contemplating making a dish, and you're bringing everything together, go through the texture. Like you want some complementing, contrasting textures. So you want something silky, smooth, and soft, and crunchy, and crispy, whatever. You want to change the colors up. You don't want something that's just brown. So you want to think of how to incorporate new colors into it, and that will often mean adding vegetables, which is good, and it will add lots of new flavors. And then you want to do the contrasting flavors, like this, like I was saying before, sweetness and saltiness and spiciness and whatever. And if you start approaching dishes like that, you can really build them out into something that's way more satisfying, because you've covered all of your bases, kind of thing. And that's what I think about when I'm even
to have right in front.
When I'm walking around the grocery store with something in mind, I'm like, okay, this, I got it, like some shanks for ossobuco, let's say. And then, I'm doing this, and then I'm like, well,
one of my
everything's looking really brown, so maybe I want to get something really colorful to add to it. And then everything's really slow cooked and braised and rich, so I want something bright and acidic to go with it, like maybe a bright salad to go on the side. So you're playing with all those different contrasting elements, and that's how I approach meals, anyways. And I find that when you're struggling to add that crispy level or add that salty level or whatever, that's when you start making really good meals.
Yes.
Yeah. You said something earlier, Adam, that I can't unthink about now, as far as thinking about your flavors as shapes, and also just your meal the same way too. Just that if you've got oftentimes you just need to create balance in a lot of things. It's kind of like if you're talking about the reason why there's guitar, drums, bass, and singing in a band is because it rounds the whole thing out. And that's one of the things that I think that, I think we have a whole episode on the fact that we're not very good at doing sides. Like all of us, the four of us that are typically on this podcast are really good at the meat part. And then we kind of forget about the sides. And I think that's a really cool way of do that part, make that meal the way you're eating. And then so you mentioned a shank, one of my favorite reasons why I like to do all my own processing is I like to keep the shanks, and you don't get those usually when you have it butchered. It's so good. And I have this really rich dish that I make with shanks, and it's so good. And I've always struggled with that side. So as soon as you said that bright salad, like a citrusy salad, I'm like, that's what I need, or a vinaigrette on a salad. The
side can be your contrast. It doesn't have to all be in the same dish.
Love that. That's awesome.
100%.
And the Italians know what they're doing. They made a really rich meat dish, and they'll put a gremolata on top, which is a crunchy, crispy breadcrumb full of garlic, sharp garlic and lemon peel. And it's just that's exactly what you need to go with your rich meal, because you need something to cut through it. You want something crunchy. So yeah, other cuisines have knew this 1,000 years ago, and have been creating awesome things to go with it. So it's well worth paying attention to.
I think another way to look at it too is it's okay not to eat everything all at once. Think about, you go to a restaurant, you order an appetizer, and you order a main course, and then maybe you're like, oh, I still maybe I'll have a soup or something. It's okay to do that at home. You can just be all right, first up, we're going to eat this thing. And then next up, we're going to eat this thing. And then, I think, and I think that differs because a lot of European cultures too, and other world cultures, meals are approached much differently than we do in the US. And for us, it's all right, if we're at home, we're going to sit down and we're knocking through it because we're moving on to the next thing. And I think it very much is an event in the rest of the world. And I think to me, I think we approach it that way very much at my house. It's a nightly thing. I think tonight's the exception because I was all right, here's food. See you later. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Also, if you're looking at ways to amplify your experience, just do courses. Yeah. I mean, that's a fancy thing to do.
Yeah.
It's a fancy thing to do. We don't get a lot of culture here in Indiana with our courses.
Not on the Okayest Cook channel. No. We don't do courses yet, but we're going to introduce them for sure. So
yeah.
I mean, it's fun too, like to have different things done, and just kind of taste different things and like focus on a dish like tapas. Like I love tapas food.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, they bring you your little plate, and you're like, for that moment, you're like so engrossed in this little plate that it's like it's the center of the universe until the next little plate comes out, and then you move on. And like I think it's great.
Yes, would a 4-year-old appreciate that? Let me see.
No,
You gotta train them. You gotta train them, man.
Yes, we'll train them.
No,
Or
I
you
think
eat
about,
separate.
yeah.
Yes, there you go.
Well, that's a slippery slope. I raised a kid who never ate the same thing we ate, so it can be it can be a little slippery there. But I will say one of the things I've grown to appreciate is things like tapas. Those are like where you get to like try several different things of stuff. One of the things I just saw, I don't have to completely just derail this conversation, but I saw this picture and I really want to have you guys weigh on this. It was like a chili charcuterie board. So it was a chili pot.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, and a bunch of the other stuff, like the fixings to go along with it. And what a fun way to be able to like, and not to just make one bowl of chili, but like start with smaller bowls. Like especially when you have a meal that you've got like a good solid base of, you can almost make it more interesting by having that be the base, but then just give out little bowls. So like make one way and then make one super hot. Make one a lot more on the acidic side or whatever. Can be another fun way to like take one meal that is, and this is again going back to the meal prep Andy here. How do you make that meal a little bit more interesting? Well, make something that is a good solid base that you can dress up 6 different ways.
Yeah, for sure.
I like it. I haven't seen this. I'm missing out on it.
It's fun.
It got sent to me like 5 times today.
A bowl of chili is a really good thing to look at in terms of what we've been talking about, because you got like a kind of spicy, rich, soft meal on a bowl, and then it's good like that. But like a big, huge bowl of chili, kind of there's something missing a little bit, even though it's good and warms your belly. But you add some lime scented sour cream to that, and now you got a brightly acidic and cooling element. And then you add some tortilla chips or whatever, and then you got a crunchy element, and then you add a little bit of cilantro, and you got a herbaceous element, and you can keep doing that, and then suddenly you've balanced out your meal into this beautiful bowl that has everything you want out of it, and that's a really good way to just show what we've been talking about a little bit. It's good, but it gets better and better and better each thing you add to.
Yes, as long as it's not macaroni noodles,
no,
you'll be okay.
Yeah, we've had
you're not a chili mac fan.
No, we've had this debate on this.
Chili. No, that's a different episode. We'll get into that one. Yes.
I found the picture, but I don't want to share my screen. I don't know how that works, so
we'll send you the picture later. Yeah, the chili charcuterie. Yeah. Sorry, the kids are going nuts in the background. It's all right.
That's cool.
You mentioned walleye earlier, and I've been trying to segue it in for 10 minutes now, but I couldn't do it. But I saw on your list you've got walleye Reuben sandwiches. I think it's walleye. Yeah, walleye Reuben. Yeah. I want to talk about that real quick because I've been on a Reuben kick lately, and back to frying my taste buds, like just those harsh, contrasty, kind of like crazy Reuben flavors are just really hitting the spot right now. But I don't know how walleye, like how does fish work into that? Like, you're not like turning the fish into pastrami, are you? Or
for that recipe, I used similar spices that you'd find on pastrami. Okay. So you get the ghost of the pastrami in the sandwich. So it still tastes like a Reuben, but there's something very different going on
without all the curing salts. And
and that's the when you get better at cooking, the fun thing to do, and that's what chefs seem to really like doing, is to play with nostalgic flavors by creating something that's tastes like that, brings that nostalgia, but tastes different and feels different. And I kind of did that with this walleye Reuben, and it's just I used like the typical ingredients you use for walleye, so like the Russian dressing, the sauerkraut, the rye bread, and then I butter poached walleye fillets, and then spiced them with this kind of pastrami spices, and it was I guess barring my Nashville hot pike sandwich, it's the best, one of the best sandwiches I've ever made, I think.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah.
Love the sound of that. It sounds awesome. Yeah.
Somewhere Corey's freaking out right now because you said butter poached. And all I'm just imagining is this cooking in butter.
Oh yeah.
I can attest to the butter poaching. So we used to do like virtual cooking classes during COVID, and Adam did a butter poached fish as one of his episodes, and it hit home literally. My wife tuned in and like sat through his course on this butter poaching fish, which I think is phenomenal. But like we had it that night for dinner after she made the recipe, and then we continued to like incorporate it into other dishes as we kind of like went along. But I think like it's really cool. There's the concept of like, wait, you're cooking it not like just cooking in butter, but you're like cooking in butter. Yeah, like
that's where like we Corey on our podcast. This man puts more butter in things than anyone probably.
Good
day. The idea of quite literally cooking in butter is pretty cool. And again, I'm assuming you guys are just melting down a bunch of butter and just literally cooking it in. I wasn't
basically it's really soft heat and just let it slowly poach in the butter, and it's just cool. You can picture it's like it doesn't like soak up the butter, but it just becomes so rich and it's just my words just turned into blah when I talk.
Butter.
And it's a very easy technique. Like I poached fish in butter. You can poach chicken in butter. You can poach pork in butter. I poached literally wild pig testicles in butter before, and they were pretty good.
I've eaten them. It's
true. Yeah, I mean, you literally just like today or yesterday, you guys came out with your weird food episode, and I'm like really anxious to listen to that. But we've got some weird food experience as well, and the testicle conversation. We need Colton here for that one, though.
Yeah, Colton, he does not like it, but I made them. They were good. They were good. We ate them.
Good.
Yeah. If you get around the taboo, just mentally, it's a really hard thing to eat. But like the flavor, I think was dynamite. It was there.
Because I basically just cooked the ones that we had in butter. And honestly, if somebody had just said, "Hey, look, this is a delicacy. Just eat it. Just enjoy what it is," 100%. You would have eaten it and be like, "Oh, I can see that this is rich and delicate and whatever." And like that's
weird texture.
And then you would be like, "By the way, those are deer balls." And they'd be like, "Oh, great, thanks."
I think they've got like the perfect texture and flavor to like be a sausage add-in.
So I've never thought about that.
Like a testicle sausage. Like,
I'm
kind of interested to do it, but also kind of terrified at the same time.
Well, I know what I'm doing this weekend.
Yeah. You definitely have to serve the sausage with. You got to serve the sausage with more testicles, though.
It's complete the picture.
Yeah, you just have to do it.
You crossed it.
And now we're children.
Yeah.
Well, shoot. On that note, we might be running low on time here. We've got like a million more things to chat about. We might have to do like a round 2 of this. I've loved all the conversation today. Again, the techniques have been real fun. Like I love, I'm like in my head, I'm trying to like sort through like what I want to try first. Either the butter poaching or setting things on fire in my kitchen. One of these 2 things, but no, definitely appreciate you guys being here, sharing your time, sharing your processes with us. Like absolutely love all that. Harvesting nature pretty much everywhere across the board, right? If people want to follow along with your guys and your adventures, you're everywhere, right? Instagram, YouTube.
We've taken over the socials.
Yes. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, these guys know like exactly what they're doing. It still baffles my mind. You're all self-taught, but just Google harvesting nature anywhere, and these cats will pop up. Ton of stuff on the website. I've got your link tree popped up here. Go to harvestingnature.com, intrepideater.com. Like tons of like super cool stuff. Just anything and everything, right? Anything else you want to throw at us here before we punch out for the day?
I'll say one thing. I'll shameless plug. We talk about all these cool things and we do all these cool things. If you want to come do these cool things with us, like we do camps, in-person camps where we do like shooting, hunting, butchering, processing, cooking. We do them in Texas. We have one coming up in December, and then we have one coming in. Actually, this is the first herd for that. We have one coming up in April that Hank Shaw is going to come hang out with us and teach as well.
Hank Shaw?
The Hank Shaw. Yeah.
Where's
that's
that
what
one?
happened.
Is that Texas or
Texas? Yeah.
Okay.
So lots of pigs in Texas, and they're
Where
delicious.
about in Texas?
Just north of Dallas. So was it Longview?
We're about north of Dallas.
Is that your neck of the woods?
Like right here in my world.
Andy's been there a time or two.
Yeah.
Not Longview. What is
It's Longborough, something Jacksboro.
Jacksboro? Okay.
Yeah.
Jacksboro.
And Andy, I might have to join you here if we get to meet Hank.
Well, I go down
to
to Texas all the time. I'll be there in November as well. I'll probably be back in December anyway. So might as well make
come
a
on
trip out
by.
of it. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We still have
you're-
a few seats. I think we still have 6 seats for December camp, and then we have not launched the April camp yet. We're going to in like probably the next week or so. But that one's going to be super cool because obviously we have a special guest coming.
It's
on top
cool.
of
I've been interested in them for a long time. You do like a snow goose one as well. It looked like on
we
your
do,
website.
yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
like I said,
it's
it's start
pretty
to finish. I'm assuming like zero experience needed. Like you'll go through absolutely everything, but like just
You
the
can
cooking
come in.
portion
You
would
can
be
come in
awesome.
as an experienced hunter or never having shot a gun before, and we'll make sure you leave with like lots of new knowledge.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah, and just witness some of these techniques firsthand. So super sick. Yes. So typically, we try and give a recipe out at the end of the episode. Do you guys have something on hand you want to share, or if
I posted.
If you don't have something handy, like the website is just absolutely chock full. Like we could just send people there.
Well, follow that link tree. The link that was in here, and then go to the guys. Check these out. Like they've got that's coming. Adam and I were talking. We were talking a little bit beforehand about what he was working on there and kind of put together a new recipe. So give these guys a follow, not only just for Harvesting Nature, but just independently and individually too. Lots of cool stuff that these two are up to. So if you're a part of the Okayest Hunter Network, in addition to Okayest Cook, you should definitely check these guys out. They should be in your feed.
Yes. But it's just cooking in general. I mean, you guys, you know what you're doing. You're doing it really well. 100% tune into to their podcast. Search Harvesting Nature on all podcast platforms, and just the amount of knowledge you'll get is just incalculable. Like you guys know what you're doing, and I absolutely love what you're doing. So keep putting them out there. Absolutely love it.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. It's great.
Yep, cool. Yeah, we'll catch up soon.
Let's do it again.
Yes, sir.
For
Take
sure.
care.
Bye, y'all.